Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Sales. If you're looking for actionable insights and real-world tools to turbocharge your sales starting tomorrow, well, you're in the right place. Your host, Kay Miller, earned the affectionate nickname Muffler Mama when she sold more automotive mufflers than anyone else in the world. In this podcast, Kay will talk to another superstar woman in sales as they reveal uncopyable strategies you can use to rack up more leads, snag dream clients, and take your sales numbers through the roof. Stay tuned and get ready to make more sales and how about this? More money.
Today, I am super excited to interview one of my very good friends, one of my very best friends, Trudy Miller. Hi, Trudy. How long have we known each other? Would you say 10 years?
10 years at least.
Okay, we'll say 10 years. And we call each other the Miller sisters because we both married Millers. Trudy has a long and very accomplished sales career. And I can't wait to dig into some of the things that you've done and how you became so successful. And I have to mention something very exciting. And that is that you just officially retired.
Yes.
And are you excited about that?
I am excited because I just view it as a whole new chapter of opportunities. It's a really good feeling. And I haven't really felt it yet because the 31st was technically my last day and we're just a few days into January. So I'm just getting used to it.
Right. And I, like you said, what chapter is ahead? And people are going to figure out, you and I are both about 65, and that used to be old. And when my dad, I remember he worked at Frederick and Nelson, and all the men back then, it was the executives, they would retire at 65, and within a year, I swear, they would drop dead. And
I think that's happening with a lot of people, or has happened in the past with a lot of people.
And you are just so vibrant. We're going to talk a little bit more about your next passion that you want to really embrace and get into more. But today we are just going to pick some highlights of your sales career because we only have 30 minutes and you've done a lot more than we will talk about. But these are some great high points. One of your first jobs, not actually your first job, but one of your early jobs was working at Nordstrom. And right before we started talking, you made a comment about something that really motivated you to be the best. So can you speak to that?
When I started working there, I realized the quality of my peers and the other people that I worked with. And it could be those that were in support positions as well as those that were in sales. So what I realized was that quality, that caliber, and I was proud of it. And I also was grateful to be on that team.
And you wanted to live up to those standards.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that they had an excellent training program and helped you be self-motivated. And as I mentioned, with my dad working at Frederick and Nelson, even as a kid, you'd walk into Frederick and Nelson and there'd be these old ladies with sourpuss faces. And then you'd go to Nordstrom and everyone was so helpful and nice. And it was such a different culture. So how did Nordstrom get people like you and people that loved to be good?
Well, at the time that I applied to get a job there, it wasn't overnight. You didn't just go in and get the job. It took time. They looked into your past. They spoke to your past employers. They did their due diligence for sure. I think that's where it starts, that they got their true caliber. But I think to speak to what they created as a team was their enthusiasm in each individual salesperson. And they made each person feel accountable for their business. It was almost like what you did, was part of that team. But I do remember one of the first big sales that I worked on. And prior to the store opening, is that we had kind of a rah-rah rally. Now, we always had customer service meetings or meetings that were about that and gave accolades and stuff. But this really hit me. It was Bruce Nordstrom, and he led this meeting, and we were all, pumping us up and, just take care of the customer, whatever they want, you can give back their money. Don't worry about it. Just take care of the customer. And then the next thing we knew is that people were lined up outside, and we all stood up as salespeople all across the store. We stood and clapped as the customers came in the store. And
wow.
It was spine-tingling. It really was. So that kind of enthusiasm, it just go like, let's go. It's kind of like a team football game, you get started and go. So it was exciting.
That's great. And I run into a lot of people that say, okay, we're supposed to treat our customers like gold and all the things you're supposed to do for your customer. But a lot of that comes down from management. So if management doesn't treat the employees well, then that is really hard for you to treat the customer well. So I had no idea that they did that. That is fascinating. Who knows if they still do it now, but, the Nordstroms have transitioned into the sons and more sons and family. But what a great way to kick off everyone's day and get them super pumped. So is that the main way? You said that they really encourage self-motivation?
I think, of course, we had numbers posted daily, so you knew where you stood, and it was important to make your worth, because whatever your hourly was, you needed to make it in sales to pay for yourself, basically. So you knew that it was important that you stayed among the pack, and, always wanted to stay above that median. So that was a big piece of that. But we also had several sales seminars. They had Zig Ziglar was a big piece of their training. We had movies and then we'd have discussions after we'd watch these presentations by Zig Ziglar. And it was very motivating because it was enthusiastic. And, the language, there's another thing that I felt really was big, is that the language was opportunities rather than critical changes. If you talked about someone's need, they need opportunity. These are opportunities for advancement or for change, rather than you're doing this wrong. So language was really a big piece. It was respect. It was mutual all across the board. And I think that it was wonderful that, you learn that. Plus, these stores have 500 employees in the day that I worked there. That was from janitorial through display and all in between, of all these different people that had a part. And their job was not in any way differentiated from someone that was in sales or someone that was in management. And I think even as time went by, I realized to be a salesperson in the organization was actually more fun, less stressful than being, say, a manager who really didn't have the opportunity to make the same kind of money. Mm-hmm. And also because of those restrictions, we could be friends with everybody if we're in sales. And that was really fun. And we had really a lot of fun meetings weekly for the most part, and people received customer service awards. They would read letters that people sent. And when that happened to you in a sales meeting, or even when you just got one, which was really great, I remember that being my gas money. Here's $20 for that. We got another letter of congratulations or good service. And so everything that you did, I think, in that environment was acknowledged. So acknowledgement, encouragement, cooperation, all of those things paid a lot to how the Nordstrom culture was. So
I like that. And I think a lot of sales trainers get so bogged down in what you should say. lines that you should say, or, ways that you should guide them through objections and getting them to say yes or whatever. But you're talking about something that becomes the attitude and everyone's on the same team and just makes you want to be good, be really, really good.
And you wanted to help out your peers too, because we would help each other out with projects or cleanup, or I don't know. It was just a different environment, and it's not easy to replicate. They just have always, and it helps that the product is first class,
top of the line, right?
Yes. And that at that time, especially, there wasn't as many options for getting those kinds of things, and service was much more important. Our culture's changed a lot. More people are buying online and that kind of thing. So, that I feel really blessed that I had the opportunity to start in that as a young person and learn those things, the respect, the cooperation and consideration, and realizing that person who picked up the garbage in your area was just as important as the person that set up the display. So it was
right, a lot of respect. That's great. I remember back in the day when I was a kid, there were elevator operators. Do you remember those?
Yeah. Well, I didn't live in this area, so and nor did I see that. I think I saw that at Frederick and Nelson, as you mentioned, that they have that still, that old building with the old soda fountain. All of that was really classy. But the difference between those stores, I believe, was the energy. That starkness of Frederick and Nelson was not like the energy that you walk in and you hear a piano playing, for example. And the person is sitting there smiling as they're playing. And, those kinds of things just set a tone, not only for, and then you could smell that wonderful coffee too. Because, the coffee was a big deal. It wasn't as readily available to get a latte. Nordstrom was one of the first.
Right. I wanted to ask you one more thing, because you said you have to justify your numbers. You have to be really good, and you have to sell. That's what you were there to do.
Oh, absolutely.
But you did say that you didn't want to get stressed out by the numbers, that you felt it was more important to just go through the actions, do your best, but not necessarily focus on where you were on the list at all times.
It really deterred from me to see a list and see where I was at, and to also even talk to my peers about it during the day. I was very quiet about what I was doing, and mostly because I didn't really want to know if I was behind. I wanted to just keep plugging ahead. And my most of the time, my operation was to wait until the end of the day to look at what my numbers were. And maybe I'd stay a little longer to make those sales bump up a little bit, or just get one more in or something if I felt like I needed it. But I got distracted if I was to look at what everybody else did. And I have used that same philosophy throughout my entire career. I just bulldoze through and do the very best, because that is the most important. You just have to keep plugging along and do the very best you can, and not to get bogged down by looking at someone else or even listening to someone else, because they can deter you. And possibly there's a motivation to doing that, to kind of getting people off track, because then that makes them look better. I don't know. I've always felt, here's my yellow brick road. I'm going to follow it to the Oz and not take any pauses along the way.
I like that. I think that is really good, because as we talked about, there are ups and downs in sales. Even during one day, there's ups and downs, and you didn't let that get in your way. So I think that is really key.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the acclaimed book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition by K. Miller. If you want to make more sales, you need to read this book. We'll even get you started with a free download of the first 2 chapters. Go to uncopyablesales.com/chapters to grab this offer right now.
So we're going to jump ahead because time is flying by. As I knew it would, you went from Nordstrom to US West, which became Dex. And I remember back in the day, that was a highly coveted job, getting into the yellow pages.
It was a big deal because I had no idea that it really was that. I found, believe it or not, I found the help wanted in the newspaper and in the Seattle Times. And I just applied, and it took a long time before they got to me. And it was quite a process. Had to take a written exam first and then a telephone exam. And I mean, it took almost 3 months to get that job. And it was a difficult job to get into the higher level, to the outside sales, where you could make the 6-figure salary, which was
back in the day.
That was a lot of money. And I had no clue that I was actually in that environment till I was already immersed, that it was that kind of money or anything. I was just thinking, oh, I can do this job because I have my background in communication and marketing. I thought, yeah, I can do this. And at that time, the Bell system was owned by US West, and we were all one company. The Yellow Pages was part of that. And we didn't really talk about what I was selling, but it was Yellow Page ads. And eventually it did break off. And there was a lot of changes, of course, over the years with those corporate companies. But at the time that I started, they were all together.
Okay. Right. And I also wanted to mention that you started in inside sales. That was a requirement. For 2 years, you had to be in inside sales. But at the very moment you qualified for outside sales, they put you there. So they obviously saw huge potential in you.
No one that actually got into outside sales had not achieved President's Circle, which is a dollar amount that is based on, it's kind of like everyone is in the pot. It's that average of kind of thing. And it was points on all kinds of things from accuracy to sales and so on. So there was quite a few things that were involved in that, and customer service. But I made President's Circle in the telephone sales job, and that's how I was promoted into premise sales. And I was put into an office that had a book closing at that very time. And it was quite a struggle because the things that had been left on the plate were problems. You know, that's always how that goes. If someone's already worked a market and things are left, usually it's issues. And a lot of times it was just the fact that customers gave pushback and didn't want to do it. And I really still have trouble with that one because I've worked on deadlines for so many years that if there's a deadline, personally, I'd rather be ahead of the curve and get it done early. But, you know, customers always like to push it off. And I had a particular situation where one of my really large accounts, his name is Mike. I went to meet with him and we were in his office and he was angry and he'd had a bad experience with the person that I replaced. And he just didn't want to hear anything I had to say. And in fact, I think it was just a buildup of probably the fact that I'm telling him, you know, you have no time. And he stood up in his desk and he looked over at me and he said, if you don't like it, you can hit the road and out the door you can go. And I just sat there kind of trembling. And I said to him, Mike, you want these Yellow Page ads. I know that they work for your business. And I'm the best rep that you're going to have. If I leave, who do you think is going to come here and talk to you? I know I'm new into this position, but I have the smarts and I know what you do. I've been a customer of yours way longer than I've been your rep. So I know your business. And you'd do a lot better sticking with me. He slowly sat down kind of pushed the papers around and said, okay, where do I sign?
I love that. And I asked you to tell that story because I love it so much. And you had the guts to stand up to him. Like you said, just because you're trembling doesn't mean you can't do it anyway. But yeah, and what a confidence builder that must have been. And I know that you became one of his really valued vendors. In fact, like you said, times changed with the yellow pages and technology. And so you saw the writing on the wall and you ended up making a transition and working for Valpak, which was still B2B sales. And he followed you. He
did. And my job at Valpak has been really valuable because it's been a very independent working environment. Still hard, you still got deadlines. You still got to make those numbers. No different than any other position. But the great thing is that I had a lot of flexibility and I was able to manage my market the way I wanted to. And it matched my lifestyle. And I think, it doesn't really matter if you're making $100,000 at, Dex, say, for example, and then you move to a job where you know that it's going to be tough to make that in the first year for
a while. Yes.
It's kind of like, okay, but what am I giving up? And for me at that point in my life, I was newly married and we wanted a life together more than we wanted a paycheck. And my job had become so stressful with Dex. So it was a great transition. And this customer followed me. And during my tenure at Valpak, he actually asked me to start handling their social media, their marketing, and asked me to start my own business so that they could pay me as a contractor, which is what I did. I worked for him for 6 years before it just became, they needed someone full time and I wasn't willing to do that. But he is still really one of my great friends. That's how those things go if you have a good relationship. And I like to say it's a no BS bullshit. I hope you don't mind that I said that.
Oh, no, that's fine. That is totally fine.
But, it's really like a person that I think this is the thing that has made me successful overall is I do go right for what's truth. I never try to sugarcoat anything because it always comes back to bite you.
Right.
And he really kind of was. I was pretty young. I was still learning at the time that I sat there and shook in my boots. But over the years, he helped me to understand customer a lot more and how, to be honest with them and straightforward with them and speak from your heart always is the best answer, even if you lose a little bit in the sale, because you'll gain way more in the long term.
Right. And I do want to mention that your first year with Valpak that you became Rookie of the Year. So you applied those skills and became very successful.
Well, and I want to say that my 19 years with Valpak, my boss just called me prior to our call, still asking me to come back. So that makes me feel pretty good.
Oh, I know. You're a hot commodity over there, and I know they're sorry to lose you. But like we talked about, you have a chapter ahead, which partly includes yoga and also skiing. And we ski together. You actually got me back into skiing, which has been, super important to me. So special. You're the president of the ski club now. I do have one funny story because when I'm on Zoom, I have all my lighting set up just like and I have my makeup on. And one time we were skiing and you said, gee, you look a lot better on Zoom than you do in person.
I remember saying that. You said that today. I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's a true friend for you. I took it with this in a spirit of love, but you tell it like it is, like you said.
Sometimes it makes people uncomfortable. It can make me uncomfortable, but I do feel that being that honest person is better than the BS.
Right. And you said that then you find out maybe this customer isn't the right customer. Getting to the bottom of it quickly. If they're not going to buy, you don't want to waste your time or theirs. So I also know, and just like going back to Nordstrom, you really do care about your customers.
Oh, yes.
When we talked beforehand, you mentioned those letters that you would get from customers from Nordstrom. And you said, I love my customers. And that attitude comes through. Yeah, you stand up to customers when it's time. But overall, just like with Mike, you guys have become friends. He values you for being that person that also, you won't take any BS, but you also will really do right by your customers. And
absolutely. And I think that goes both ways. See, we learn to respect. It goes completely back to that Nordstrom thing, the respect, the cooperation. And, that to me, that's like a good marriage, actually, right? If you can cooperate and respect, then you do love each other too.
right. So everybody's a winner. And as
Yes.
I talk about in my book, let's give my book a little plug. You are actually in my book, and I'm not going to tell the story because if you want to hear the story that is in my book about Trudy, you've got to go get the book. So there you go.
One of my Valpak clients, and he's being passed on to someone else because he stayed with me. So
Yes, Trudy got creative, got in the door when nobody
with your
else
help,
could.
Kate.
A little bit. And that story is kind of funny because we literally were driving up to the ski slope. And normally we take a bus, but that was during COVID. So you and I carpooled and we're talking marketing and business and sales. Then we came up with a plan. Yes, brainstorming.
I think it's really helpful if you have peers that you value to do that. I've learned some of my best stories and information from my peers. And so it goes back to what I said about who you work with. And if you feel like they're first class, follow them, go spend time with them, go on a ride with them all day. It'll make them feel good. And they'll tell you stories they wouldn't tell you just off the cuff. And they'll also put you under their wing. I think that's a big deal.
And I think, it's better than it used to be for sure. Women supporting women. And you cheer for me and I cheer for you. We both want the best for each other. And I know you've got a team at Valpak that's mostly women. Is it all women?
Well, other than the owner.
Other than the owner. So
we've had some guys, but they've moved on. Yeah. And in fact, the whole entire organization across the country is probably 75% women, which is interesting.
It is interesting. And I'm not sure why that is, but
they don't know either. They don't know either. It's kind of funny. I think part of it is it's a very independent job. And ladies, we're a lot more independent and we are good organizers. We keep our home in order, even if we're working. We keep our children in order, even if we're working. And so we put that work thing right in between all of that and sandwich it together.
Right. We have a lot on our plate. I don't know if we keep our homes organized, though, in my case, but
maybe with a little help.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I told you when we started, this time would fly by. And it's at 30 minutes. And one point that I love that you talk about helps you with objections, and it's the feel, felt, found. Can you just quickly go over that and we'll come to that, our ending point?
This I learned at Dex, and it was always something that we said, it's how you speak to your customer. And basically you would say, I know how you feel because they're objecting, right? So I get what you're feeling. And in that situation, I had felt the same way too, blah, 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 or maybe a similar. But this is what I found. It all works out, right? That's kind of the story.
Right. And I'm sure you use that with other customers too.
Oh,
customer
many.
X.
It's always in my mind.
Yeah.
Because it puts you in the same situation as your client. They feel like you can understand and that you're in that with them, that you're in the same boat. So,
right. and you're knowledgeable. You have experience that they don't have.
Right.
You know things that they don't have. So when they truly trust you and you become an advisor, then that makes you that much more valuable, and it makes that much easier to make a sale and to close a sale.
I'd like to call myself a consultant before I call myself a salesperson, because you have to understand what their needs are before you can sell them anything.
Right. And one of my highest compliments was when I was back in outside sales, and one of my customers sent a letter to my boss, and he said, Kay has become an asset. We don't know what we do without her. So I know that is, I'll never forget that. I have that letter in my file 30 years later.
I understand. And you know what is really cool is that you can go back and remember that when you're in an ugly situation where it's difficult, you can say, I am good and I am this. You know, it's kind of like pursuing a goal of fitness. You know, you set your goal there, and along that path, it's not easy, but you have the diligence and the strength to get there.
Right. And like some people keep a list of positives, things that they're successes. And yes, those are great things to remember when you're struggling. We touched on your yoga. You are such a fabulous yoga teacher, loving, kind. It's more spiritual. It's not taxing for mature audiences. And you now do it over Zoom. You had a space, and then of course, COVID messed that up. So you went virtual, and I love that. We do that on Wednesday nights, and it's sorry, that's right. We switched years ago, and I'm still stuck on Wednesday. Wednesday's our ski day. So I am going to put the link in the show notes. And Trudy, you offer a free class if you want to try this.
Yes,
and it's life changing. As I get older, and I'm 64. I really notice, compared to a lot of my friends, that I don't have the aches and pains, that I'm flexible. I'm able to ski and do the Peloton and do, like you are, Trudy, you're very active. And yoga has been a huge part of that. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
I think it's the foundation. I really do.
And going forward, I know that's what you're going to focus on. So kudos and recommendations to Trudy and her yoga. Please check it out. Trudy, you and I have had a great time. Like I said, we always do. You and I think, laugh so much when we're together. Oh my gosh. It's just a laugh fest, giggle fest. We just crack each other up. So it's a wonderful friendship. I really respect and admire your sales track record and all the things that you've done. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me on the podcast and your support. So thank you so much, Trudy, for being here.
You're very welcome. And thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Sales, your source for secrets you can use to make more sales. Check the show notes for links and contact information. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please spread the word by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. You can always learn more by going to uncopyablesales.com/podcast. Until next time, go out and supercharge your sales like a true uncopyable rock star.